Hello traders, hello everyone. Thanks for watching this video tutorial. In this tutorial we'll talk about the pivot points and I will show you how I'm using the pivot points in Forex trading. Please take a short moment to read the risk disclaimer, it is very important. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can share, like and comment to our videos. Also, follow us on Instagram. We have a lot of VIP content there as well. And if you want our full services, if you want to receive all our signals, trading signals, please join our VIP Telegram group by accessing the link posted right below this video. Thank you guys. So let's take a look here on the euro versus the US dollar. Here we have the daily chart. I will use the TradingView platform for this trading tutorial, and you will find here at indicators, if you will click on indicators, and if you want to add the pivot points, you can go here, build-ins, and you can type here pivot points, and you can use this one, pivot point standard. Okay, I have these pivot point standard as my favorites here, so I will add the pivot points standard from here. And personally, I'm using, for the daily chart, I will use the monthly pivot points like this, and here we have the style. You can use several types of pivot points, from traditional, Fibonacci, Woody, Classic, EM, Camarilla. So personally I'm using Classic or traditional, and also you can show the historical pivot points, right? Okay, and also here we have the pivot point, the support, the resistance, one, the second support, the second resistance, and you can use more levels, the third support, the third resistance, the fourth support, the fourth resistance. Okay, so here on the daily chart we have the monthly pivot points. So this is the monthly pivot point here on the daily chart, and I will use, on the 4-hour chart I will use the weekly, maybe also on the 1 hour I will also use the weekly pivot points, and for scalping maybe for, I don't know, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, I will use the daily pivot points. Okay, so please take a look here, and in theory, when the price is above the pivot point and drops below the pivot point, maybe if it retests the pivot point, then maybe it should continue to drop towards the S1, the first static support. So in theory, when the price is below the pivot point, the bias is bearish, or registering a valid breakdown below the pivot point represents a bearish signal. Or when the price is below the pivot point and makes a valid breakout above it, above the pivot point, breakout, retest, maybe new higher high, then it should maybe continue to increase. So jumping above the pivot point is seen as a potential bullish signal, but it's really hard, guys, to trade only based on this indicator on pivot points, okay? Because I will also add the historical pivot points here, and here we have June pivot points, here we have May pivot points, and here we have April. Okay, and yeah, it's really hard to trade only based on this strategy, to maybe sell when the price drops below the pivot point, or to buy when the price jumps above the pivot point with a potential resistance, or to sell when the price drops below the pivot point with a potential support at the S1. It is very important for you to understand when the market and the price is at that moment, guys, because it's very important to know if you are in an uptrend, if you have a correction, if you can identify maybe something like a pattern, a chart pattern. It is very important also to know how to use maybe the price action when using the pivot points. Okay, so let's take a look here, and right here, right in April, in 6 April, the price euro versus US dollar has registered an aggressive breakout above the pivot point, and it has continued to increase, right? Also, it has ignored the R1, it has continued to increase here, and it has reached the R1, the May R1 resistance. It has failed to stabilize above it, and then it has dropped it, and now is located right below the June pivot point, signaling a bearish pressure, signaling that the bias is bearish in the short term. Here in June, you can see that we had an uptrend. I will use also an uptrend line here. So personally, I don't trade only based on the pivot points. Okay, so personally I'm using also trend lines, static support and resistance like this. Maybe I will place a resistance here in this top. You can see that, yeah, the price has failed here to stabilize right above the R1, also because you can see here that we had a former high 1.2243, only false breakouts, and now the price has decreased. Okay, here we had a former low, and as long as the price would have stayed above this former low, maybe this uptrend would have been still intact, but the price has decreased, was rejected from here, from 1.2132. It has jumped above the pivot point, the monthly pivot point, but it has failed to stay above it, signaling some pressure. And this breakdown here below the uptrend line has signaled that we may have a potential correction. So personally, I'm using a lot of tools along with the pivot points, and I like to use the pivot points as potential targets, guys. Support, resistance. If the price increases, I will set maybe my target here at the R1. Also, maybe if the price will stay below 1.2132, maybe my first target will be here around the S1. Also, you can use other technical tools like Fibonacci retracements, and you can see here that we have the 23.6 right at 1.2132, and also we have the 38.2 retracement level right here at the S1, right? And if the pair will continue to drop, we can use the S1 as a potential downside target here at the 38.2 retracement level. So it is very important to use other tools, other indicators to identify maybe trading opportunities, maybe exhaustions like this one here, reversals, or when the price could maybe register only a temporary retreat. So, and personally I've told you that I'm using a pivot point as, and the support, the resistance as targets, as support levels, resistance levels. So right now the pivot point is a resistance as well. As long as it stays below it, the the bias is bearish here in the short term as long as the price stays below the pivot point. I've told you guys. And also, when the price maybe fails to, I don't know, approach and reach the R1, it could drop towards the pivot point in the upcoming period. Okay, so let's say if the price is here and if it increases, if it fails to reach the resistance, it could drop towards the pivot point. And again, if the price maybe drops, fails to reach the support, it could come back towards the pivot point. Okay, so it is very important to understand how to use these pivot points. I will delete these from here and we'll go on the 4-hour chart, and I will use on the 4-hour, I told you that I will use the weekly pivot points, because if I will use the daily pivot points, yeah, it is not really good to catch something using these daily pivot points on the 4-hour chart. I've told you that I'm using the daily pivot points only when I'm trading maybe here on 15 minutes. One moment, because I will add the pivot points. So the daily, you can see here that today the price was here, has started from here, it has retested the pivot point, and then it has increased. It was almost maybe to reach the R2, the daily R2, but it has failed. It has dropped through the R1, through the pivot point, and I told you that when the price fails maybe to reach the S1, it could turn back towards the pivot point. It has jumped above it and now is moving sideways here above the pivot point. So it's really hard maybe to trade only based on these. Okay, that's why I've told you that you should use other tools, other indicators to really spot and identify great trading opportunities. So I will use here on the 4-hour chart, I will use the weekly pivot points, and right now I will use also historical pivot points. So here is the current week, here is the last week, and you can see here that the price has moved sideways right above the pivot point, failing to approach the R1, signaling an important pressure, bearish pressure here, and then it has dropped and it has reached the S1, the support, and now in the current week the price, okay, it has found support here and it has increased and it has registered only a false breakout here above the weekly pivot point. And as long as it stays below the pivot point, the pressure is still high, okay? And maybe if it will retest, then it could maybe really drop towards the S1, of the current week. But we have here the support, the S1 of the previous week, the S1 of the last week, and also we have this immediate low here, 1.2092. Okay, so for the price to drop towards the S1, it should make a valid breakdown here below this former low to confirm a deeper drop, right? And also, if the price stays above 1.2092, moves sideways, and if it makes a valid breakout to jump, to close, to stabilize, to test and retest the pivot point, and if it will make a new higher high here, yeah, to jump and close and stabilize above 1.2147, then it could continue its growth towards the R1. All right, and here as well. It is very important to use other tools. Let's maybe identify something like this, like down channel, because it's very important to understand what we have here, to understand the price action. So here we had an uptrend. This is a correction right now here, a temporary correction. I will also use again the Fibonacci retracement, because we need to know where we are here. So we are right below the 23.6. Yeah, the price has bounced back, has rebounded from here, from the S1 of the former week. We have here these lows, and the price has rebounded to test and retest the 23.6, the pivot point, the weekly pivot point. And as long as it stays below these levels, maybe it will decrease again. But I've told you, for the price to resume its downside movement, it should make a new lower low to drop below 1.2092 to resume its drop towards the weekly S1, towards 38.2, right? So that's why you should use other tools: support, resistance level, static, dynamic, trend lines, right? Or any other indicators which will maybe help you to identify, I don't know, stochastic, relative strength index, RSI, MACD, or something else to identify maybe oversold situations, overbought situations. So it's not easy to trade only based on the pivot points. I've told you that personally I'm using them only as targets, potential targets. And yeah, here if the price is located right below the pivot point, and I told you that when the price jumps above the pivot point, maybe it retests it, makes a new higher high, then we'll have a bullish signal that the price could increase towards the R1, towards the upper medium line. And here as well, drop, retest, and maybe if the price will make a new lower low, we can think that the price could drop towards the S1. Okay, so that's it about the pivot points. You should use them in trading, because you can set your targets at these pivot points, and you also use other tools to identify great buying and selling opportunities, exhaustions, reversals. Thank you guys for watching this tutorial. If you want to get all our trading signals, you can go here, Learn to Trade Go Premium, or you can access the link posted right below this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, it is very important. You can share our videos, you can like them, and you can comment. This is our website, Learn to Trade, and also please guys follow us on Instagram for more content. Thank you guys, see you next time, bye bye.